We're going to start looking at melody, and this is the magical, mystical part of songwriting. This is what makes a song memorable and special and unique. Chords are the underlying structure that you build on top of, but the melody is really what it's all about. Now, as I said before, there's no rule about what comes first, melody or harmony. There's lots of different ways of working, and it's not an either-or situation. But in this video, what I want to do is, to get you started thinking about melody, is describe a few relationships of melodic scalar chord tones in relation to the chords underneath them. Now, I by no means mean to suggest that what I'm going to show you in this video is the only possible way to harmonize melodies or to write melodies on top of chords, but it's a starting point. It's important to get used to the sound of different scalar chord degrees in the melody on top of various types of chords. So I'm going to go through a little library here of chords with melodic relationships on top of that chord, intervals of the melody or scale tone on top of specific types of triads or seventh chords. And as I say, experiment and get used to the different scale or chord degrees. And this is just a little starter guide to get you started thinking and hearing the relationship between melody notes and the chords. So I'm going to start with a tonic chord. We're in the key of C. So a C6 chord, which is the sixth chord built on the tonic, and this has the root in the melody. So there are short little melodic phrases here emphasizing the root in the melody. And here's a piano keyboard you can follow along on. Here's the notation, and that's the C in the melody on top of a C6 chord. So that's the sound of a tonic sixth chord with the C in the melody. Now let's look at this variation here, which is an add 9 chord with the major seventh in the melody. So we have C add 9 with the D in it, and it's emphasizing the major seventh, the B natural, in the melody. So that works nicely because we get a nice interval of a third between the major seventh and the D that's emphasized in that chord. You generally don't want to have notes or melodies that are a tone or a half tone away from an emphasized note in the chord, in the underlying chord. So that's why this works well, the seventh with the ninth, the D and the B. There's a nice interval between them. Let's move on to the next example. And here's a minor seventh chord with the minor seventh in the melody. So C minor 7 featuring the minor seventh in the melody. Right away, that reminds me of the first couple of notes of Aquarius. That features the minor seventh in the melody of a minor seventh chord. But again, experiment with the different chord tones. The fifth would work fine here, as would the third. The root, not so much, because then you have that interval of a tone between the B flat and the C. Not to say it can't work, but might not be a strong note to emphasize. Let's move on to the next example here. And here we have a suspended chord with the sixth in the melody. Now, by suspended chords, in case you're not sure what I mean by that, I'm talking about the fourth replacing the third. So in a C suspended chord, instead of a C triad with C, E, G, you have C, F, G. It's like a suspended fourth, which resolves down to the third usually. So here, in a C suspended chord, we have the sixth in the melody, and that works nicely because the C sus features that F, that little crush or dissonance between the F and the G. So this works nicely because we have that interval of a third between the A natural that's being emphasized here and the F, the suspended note. So a nice melodic interval of a third. Let's listen. It's got a nice kind of modal feeling to it. Let's move on to the next example. And here we have a dominant seventh chord with the sharp fifth in it, and this has the sharp fifth emphasized in the melody. So this is a very distinctive quality of chord when you get that augmented fifth. So here we're emphasizing that sharp 5 in the melody, but the root also works nicely because you get that nice interval of a third between the G sharp and the C. So if we were to emphasize the root in the melody, that is another nice choice. Even the third wouldn't work too badly. But here it is with the sharp 5 emphasized in the melody. And you see here I did go up to the root. We hit that C over there, so you just got a little taste of what that might be like. Now the next example is using a bass note. This is a regular minor triad with the third in the bass, and it's emphasizing the fifth in the melody. So we have a regular C minor triad with the E flat, but we're emphasizing the fifth. And again, that works nicely because we get that nice melodic interval between the E flat bass note and the G in the melody. It's an interval of a sixth. And even between the root, the C, and the G, it's a fifth. Not as nice a melody. Generally, thirds and sixths are better intervals or more melodic sounding intervals, but it works nicely. Let's listen to this. So again, practice with different melody notes in relation to these types of specific inversions or voicings, and you'll get some nice ideas. Let's move on to the next example. And this is a regular diminished seventh chord, diminished chord with the, when I say diminished seventh, I mean the double diminished note of the A natural. It's not a minor 7 flat 5. So we have C, E flat, F sharp, and A in this voicing. And we're emphasizing the flattened fifth in the melody, the F sharp. But honestly, in this type of chord, any of the notes work because there's a minor third interval between any of the chord tones. Any of them work equally. So here's what it's like emphasizing the flatted fifth. And you can also really add color by putting in non-chord tones to this. Like if we emphasize, let's say, a B natural, that's a nice jazzy kind of sound, or a D natural, a half tone below one of these diminished chord tones. But let's listen to this emphasizing the chord tone. So that works nicely. Next example, we have a suspended seventh chord. So again, this is with the sus4. It's got the C, F, and G, but also the B flat added. And here we're emphasizing the fourth in the melody. So this gives it a real modal feeling, like the other sus example we had, but this has the seventh added, which makes it even more colorful, and the fourth really draws attention to the suspended quality of it. Let's listen. So nice unique color there. Now here we have a C7 with the sharp 9 added. And again, this is a very distinctive chord. We have that nice dissonant interval between the E natural and the E flat, or D sharp on top. So a nice major 7, which is kind of an unusual interval to have in a chord, but it adds a nice depth and color to it. So here we're emphasizing the sharp 9 in the melody. And again, it's a very distinctive quality of chord, and I think you'll recognize it. So there you go, some examples of using chords with melodies. And one last one I want to show you is a major triad with the fifth in the bass. And this is emphasizing the second degree of the chord in the melody. So this is interesting. We're getting regular C triad here with the fifth in the bass, so it's got that dominant pedal kind of feel. And we have a D in the melody, which is not a chord tone. So that really opens up the relationship between the melody and the chord nicely. And this is emphasizing that non-chord tone. Let's listen. So experiment with your own variations of emphasizing different chord or scale tones on top of different quality of chords. This is the most useful exercise you can do, getting familiar with these relationships, and you'll be able to draw on them when you're creating your own melodies. See you for more in the next video.